What is going on? It's your boy G Consciousness in the building. I know it's late night, it's 1:34 where I'm at, but want to deal with some things real quick. Let me make sure my sound putting out. Hold on. What is going on? All right, so we definitely got sound. Let's see something real quick. Let's see. All right, so we got that together. All right, so I wanted to talk about a little group out of Chicago called Israel Tried and Refined. And I found out tonight they teach the flat earth. So I want to talk about some of those things. I think they might be still on. Let me see if they're still on.
The battles you go through.
Hey, you know what's crazy? It's see.
They definitely still
what does it say? It says.
I'll share this real quick.
What does it say? I might be saying it wrong. Correct me. But what does it says? Like leisure is the devil's playground, or
Hell yeah. Idleness is much
idleness. We say I not. Or like.
I don't mind as a double playground. Yeah.
Oh, welcome back, Sean.
The whole time. Over here chilling, playing the game right now.
What up, Dragnet? What's up with you, brother?
It's the Sabbath, bro. You should be. No, man. Hey, live your life, brother. It's all right. You play the game, man.
Real quick, shout out to Tawabia, man. I know this one of bro like go-to scriptures where it's a proverb where it say, if a man don't have control of his spirit, it's like a city that don't have walls.
Right. So, hey, brothers, to my man out there. Oh, Mike, my bad. What things can you fast for? Well, you can do what do you call it? You can do intermittent fasting. Okay, so for example, you can go, and this is what I personally do. Okay, and hell, I don't even do it just for spiritual reasons. I do it just for livelihood, right? Because it's good. When you take time out from eating, you're giving your body time to heal itself. When you're not digesting, now your body's healing from what you breathe. Now your body's healing from the water that you absorb into your skin. You're giving it time to attack the other avenues of your body. You're not focused on breaking down that Philly cheesesteak every damn day, and that pizza club, and that mild sauce with fries, and them cheese sticks. You got to break that shit down every day because that's what you stuffing in your face every day. And that Hennessy, and that Remy Ma, right? So you can do intermittent fasting.
All right, cool. I see you. Dragnut, yeah, definitely, brother. I had reached out to the brother. I still gotta do some more stuff that I can. Sorry, this as well. But definitely, the brother Faithful going through some family stuff. So if you guys can help out, you can. I know that Vocab did something just as well, or you can go to his PayPal. And let me give you his PayPal, matter of fact. Let's see. What up, LaShawn? What's going on with you, brother? Let's see. This real quick. Where is this on? Yeah, so John 4:16. I mean John 4:6. John 14:6 is his PayPal. So it's John 14:6. Let's see if I can take this and put this in if I can share this. Let's see how I can display this a little bit. If I can get this to y'all. Yeah, which is the way I can do it. If you can, put that in the chat room for me. Oh, they gonna do a roast on you? I might have to get in that. Matter of fact, you did text me the other day. I remember you text me too. Matter of fact, when is we got a spot for you? Yeah, I might have to get in that. But yeah, Drag Nut, if you can, man, put that in the chat for me. Where we can help out Brother Faithful, you know what I'm saying? That. But yeah, so these guys right here, right, is ITR, Israel Tried and Refined. And this is their page. If you want to keep an close eye on them, watch them, you know what I'm saying? All right, that's cool. If you want to keep a close eye on these guys or go to their page and subscribe or whatever the case may be, you know what I'm saying? They right here, we've encountered these guys, man, vocab up in Chicago a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And but for the most part, they come up out of One West, GMS, and they say that they're not teaching One West doctrine, but clearly they still teaching it. A lot of things in regards to the Gentiles we see, you know what I'm saying, Africans and of that sort, you know, how they speak Hebrew or whatever, you know what I'm saying, have you said or whatever style that they use, Lashawan Kodesh or something like that. Then you also got, you know, several other doctrines that they try to basically bootleg and try to basically, how can you say it, reform it, basically. Reform certain other doctrines. And to be honest, I would say this, they still got the spirit of GMS in them because it's like, you can't have no cordial conversation with these guys. You know, usually times how we was always getting it in to where any panel somebody say, hey, you know what I'm saying, they want to have a conversation about something or have a discussion, we there. You know what I'm saying? You see that even in the solo debate league or rather whatever debate league, Sal, Showtime, Debate Talk for you, shout out to that brother. Shout out to Solo and them. You know, the Argument League, Swab Boss and them. We're always there. It's like there's no stepping down. We're on the front line, regardless of the fact. These brothers right here, out of all the One West camps, is GMS, and they are scared of cordial conversations, and also when you talk about contact to discuss the scriptures, it's like when you want to get into a conversation with them, you know what I'm saying, they filibust. I'm saying they basically, you know what I'm saying, interrupt you. You know, it's nothing cordial about their conversation, and it seems like you can't get these guys just like GMS on a debate platform to where it's moderated to really deal with some of their teachings. You know what I'm saying? None of their teachers, it's like they don't like formal, they, you know, you just got to watch them. They real sloppy with the text. You know what I'm saying? And so what happens is that I have to say, when it comes to Tazariak now, when it comes to Sakari Camp, you know, I even though these guys are One West and we disagree with their teachings, they come out to debate, and mainly the scuffering that we see deals with Tazariak and them. They scuff a lot. Sakari and them, they're getting better and more formal in their debates, to where you can actually have a conversation with them now, and respectfully now, Whereas before, it got out of hand or whatever the case may be, but now it's a respectful dialogue. And I respect that. You know what I'm saying? Vocab went down there and met with them brothers, had a conversation with them brothers, interviewed Gorilla Hebrew. Shout out to them brothers. But for the most part, it's these guys, you can't have a conversation with them. And they get it from GMS. It's like they have adopted, they come out of GMS, and so they took some of their doctrine and mixed it with their own spin. But I was real when I was listening in today, they usually got the, their radio show, Blog Talk Radio. And so I was listening into these guys today, and I started realizing that a lot of these guys have adopted into their teachings the flat earth theory. And so a lot of things, when you want to question them about, they don't want to, answer those questions. And then they say, well, LaRon, what is the firmament? And you guys know me. You guys know that I've dealt with all of that already. You can go back to some of my classes here, some interactions me and Kevin G had with brothers concerning the flat earth. I'm saying that, that deals with the Black Hebrew Israelite paradigm. And so I'm just listening to these guys, and it's just like, it's real silly. Like, one of the questions that was asked was, did he make the earth, did the earth stop spinning on its axis, or did the sun stop spinning? You know what I'm saying? Or stuff like that, which really is silly, because, it wouldn't make a difference if the sun stopped rotating or stopped its solar regulation, or rather if the earth was stopped spinning on its axis, because overall there's perception here, and also it deals with it can go both ways. Either way, it can go both ways, because it's a miracle, and that's the point of it, to show you that there's something that's miraculously being done here, that's not in the ordinary, something that is odd, something that is, that does not happen. And so to say which one, or to say this and that, it wouldn't even matter, because they'll say, well, if he did it this way, how can that be, when you can't do that on a globe? That wouldn't make a difference, because overall it's still a miracle. And so it's just like, it's the stupidity that you see with these guys that's just really silly, you know what I'm saying? And so when you look at these guys, basically they don't want any contact when it comes to, let's deal with this text, or what I'm saying, let's have a formal discussion. Like right now, as you can see.
For example, like me, it be times that I go home.
As you can see.
Unless you're being a goofy, sending your money to these goofies.
They're still like,
you can go enjoy yourself.
They're still alive, right?
You chilling and you vibing or whatever. From circumnavigating, start surrounding yourself like conversations.
As you can see, they're still live now. And so usually time we go live, sometimes we be up to 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm saying we be in these hangouts just like this. And like when we go live, there's nothing to add somebody to the panel, because we're willing to have an open dialogue with them, long as they keep it respectful, and and to where sometimes it gets real respectful, but for the most part, a conversation, nobody's scared to get in there and have a conversation. If you got something that you want to bring out, bring it out. You know what I'm saying? Some people express it in a different way, but these guys right here will sit up and chat all night like divas, like, you know what I'm saying, like girlfriends on the phone or something like that. And then they want you to type in the chat room instead of saying, hey, well, brother, why don't you come on so you can explain your position better? You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to be doing all this typing. Or they'll say, well, you should have called in the show. But then when you call into the show, they don't let you speak. They cut you off. And so eventually it gets to the point to where you like, man, I might as well just unsubscribe from these brothers. You know what I'm saying? Because, I can't have no conversation with these brothers. but every chance they get, every chance you see them, oh, they like, oh, you scared of us, or you scared of us. Well, how are we scared of you when we want to try to have some type of connection or contact? You guys are not willing to really have a formal discussion. I've never seen a group of guys that's scared to get on other panels, but talk so much stuff. It's just the weakness is there. And because the control is so great among these camps, these One West camps, because they still are One West. They say that they're not, but they're teaching One West doctrine. And so, it's always, well, come over here, instead of them saying, well, we'll come to your panel. Let's have this discussion. They always telling me, see if you can get your boy Vocab and you and him come on over. Okay, Vocab got a platform. And last I checked, Vocab can easily get more numbers when it comes to getting more numbers in his chat room more than what y'all can get, plus you guys as audience. So, he's getting at least 100 plus, most likely probably every and plus he got about 10 to 11,000 subscribers, so he can easily get an audience to where you can get people in there to be edified, or or whatever the case may be. If you feel you got the juice, and it's nothing prideful. It's just dealing with the information, letting the people take the information and running with it and saying, well, this is the outcome that I got from reading the scriptures and from what these brothers was expounding on. It's nothing like that with these guys right here. And I want to go over some of the scriptures. What's up, Miss Piggy? I want to go over some of the scriptures that they was. What's up, Roxy B? I want to go over some of these scriptures that they was basically dealing with to show you that they're teaching a lot of false doctrine and ripped off doctrine that they've gotten from One West, but try to put their spin on it and then say, well, we're not One West. But really, they're still cloaked in One West garments. They just try to put their own little spin to it. So I want to bring out some things about this flat earth stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like I say, with us over here, it's not a problem with really dealing with these brothers when it comes to this information. So we do stuff like this where we will copy and paste and basically, put the link in the chat room, because, that's the type of stuff we do. And so we're very formal. We don't cut brothers off. We let brothers talk. You know what I'm saying? We let them get it in. And so if you want to come in and you keep it respectful, you can definitely do so and have a chat or a conversation. This the type of stuff that these guys don't really do. And when you go on the radio show, you know what I'm saying, their audio is horrible, first off. I'm not saying that it has to be the best, but it's definitely horrible because, you can't really hear the callers that's calling in. So, it's just not, really a good look in that area. And so I want to kind of bring out some of these things and, show that a lot of these things that when it comes to the flat earth, it does not say in the scriptures. Now, did you have Israelites that view their cosmology as a what we see a flat earth? Possibly you did. But for the most part, you got to look in this text and have to really see why Israelites called the firmament solid, or whatever the case may be, or how they expressed it as to be solid, but later on, how they changed their views on that. Was it more of an influence on science revealing what we now see? You know what I'm saying? That's possible. But then when you look at it from a standpoint on a poetic and also, perception, then you start to realize why they would have viewed it as firm, as rakia, you know what I'm saying? And as something that was solid. And one of the reasons is because it held waters above it. But what they don't tell you is is the waters, the firmament that was held, is the expansion. And what it is it's the sky. And so the expansion is what holds waters above it. So when you look at the sky, then you look above, what do you see? You see clouds, or you see, that waters are being held in the clouds. We know how rain is made. And so we're looking at the firmament, which is the expanse. And the expansion that we see stretches all the way out and to where even the very planets are set in the expansion in the firmament. And so it's just like if you stretch out a piece of toilet paper and you stretch it out, then you set the celestial bodies in the firmament, in the expansion. So this is basically what this is talking about. So let's kind of look at some of these scriptures and kind of get an idea on what's going on here, so we can show you, basically what's being taught. And this is not a salvation thing. It's not nothing that's it's essential to where, oh, if you don't believe in the flat earth, you going to hell or something like that. It's nothing like that. It's basically just for like exercise purposes and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that these brothers always attract to some type of weird doctrine never seems to amaze me. You know what I'm saying? And so even when they talk scientifically about how subatomic particles actually work, it's really ridiculous on how, the four fundamental forces work just as well. When you talk about weak force, strong force, electromagnetic magnetism, and also gravity. When you talk about those four fundamental forces, how they work from a larger and also from a lower scale, they don't really understand these things. What causes a strong force, what causes also the repulsive effect that we see when it deals with weak force just as well. But when things are more compacted and within the atom, on the closer scales, when we see protons and neutrons are so compacted together, what causes them to be binding together when they're inside of the strong force? And it doesn't have a repulsive effect to where it's not breaking apart. You know what I'm saying? But it's stable. See, these things are very important to know. And then, what is gravity and how, things are drawn to the center of the earth, where there's more material at the center of the earth. And, they conflate things like buoyancy and also, what is the other one? Man, I forgot what the other one is, but these are definitely arguments that, that basically they don't understand, you know what I'm saying, on how things operate and how things work. Even if you want to deal with it from the electrical universe, from an electromagnetic standpoint, even understanding that is very important, because now you can see how things work on a negative and a positive level, and understand the neutral aspect just as well. And so that's very important. Electrical discharges, when we see lightning and coming from the clouds, because all of these things are kind of mentioned in scriptures when you talk about the sky being strong. We're going to go to some of those scriptures to show you why why the word there translated is really dealing with the clouds, because it's dealing with the clouds being strong. And also when we start looking at the molten glass, we're going to pull out some of those things to really show you guys that these guys are these some silly guys, you know what I'm saying? But without further ado, I'm tired. Let's kind of get into this a little bit. Let's see how we can bring this out. And I'm gonna see if I can share this link. I doubt if anybody still woke who I know. Let's see. Okay, got a couple of groups here. Why is my phone moving like this? All right. All right. Shot this. And like I say, this is definitely an open conversation. So if you want to get in, you definitely can. I'm just sharing the link here a little bit. Let's see what's this right here. All right, so cool. Put the link in a couple of groups. All right, so let's look at a couple of things here and let's see what's really going on here. We want to share, and then let's get into some of these scriptures. And let's see, right there, like that. And so let's deal with Genesis. All right, so it says, and God said, let there be a firmament. Now remember, it says up at the top, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that word right there for heaven is Shemayim, and the Adats. You know what I'm saying? He created the heavens and the earth, right? So then when you begin to go down, it says, and God said, let there be a firmament. Now the Hebrew word right there is rakia.
Rakia.
Right? And so when you look at rakia properly, well, it's from H7554, which is raka. And that means to spread out, basically, to beat out, you know what I'm saying? Or spread out. So let's look at that real quick. Raka, right? Spread, stamp, stretch, beat, make broad. So we see that's what that means. And so, oh man, hold on. Oh yeah, I'll stop screen share. Let me start back again. Oh, I gotta pull this back out. Hold on. All right, so we see, you know, what that means. And like I say, it comes from Rakia comes from Raka. And so we see properly an expanse, i.e., the firmament or apparently visible arch of the sky, firmament. And this is what it has in the Strongs. Now, the ideal to what's up, J man? What up, Brandon? So the ideal that we see concerning the solid there. If you always notice it's in parentheses, it says solid, or when it says dome, or it might say glass dome or something like that. It always says this is what they thought it to be, or Hebrews thought it to be you know, and that's not nothing that's really solid. In other words, in the sense of, you know, this is what they thought it to be. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that that is what it was. And so you always see that there. You know, you're going to see that there to where it's saying solid or firm. But then once you start to begin to go into other scriptures, then you really realize what this firmament is and why was it considered to be firm and why the Hebrews would have said rakia or to be firm like it was. And we're going to show you that. And Job is really a book that kind of expresses a lot of things about strong storms, about the clouds and the sky and how the sky is strong, about the molten mirror and all of these different things. And so culturally and also textually, one must really look into those ancient things. And once you look in it, then you could begin to see and say, well, this is not saying what they say. Like when they say the earth shall not be moved and stuff like that. But then in other scriptures, it says that he's going to shake or move the earth. And so these are all things that when they say the pillars, the pillars and the four corners of the earth and all of these different things can really be explained and looked at if you look at these things from a textual, culturally, and also from a viewpoint of the cultural context of what's really going on at this time and their perception of the nature, their perception of the universe, you know what I'm saying, on how they view things and their cosmology. And so what's up, Felicia? And so what up, Ecclesiastics? So when we look at pillars, you know, that's another thing that can be explained. Like they might say a pillar of fire, or you might see where Israel was running, when Israel was running away from, when they set one of the cities on fire and the people look back and then when they look back, they seen a pillar of fire. Why did they say that? Why? Because their city was set up on a mount. And so on what we call a tell. And, and so because it was set up like that, it would have looked like a smoking volcano or something like that, the mount on fire or something. So they call it a pillar of fire because mountains, as we've seen, held up the heavens. And you find out that that's how they viewed the world, to where they seen these mountains that they were so high up that the clouds would sit up in the heavens, up on the mount. The clouds will sit up on the mountains, and they will look at the clouds holding up the heavens, what we call the firmament. And so, you know, to say that these pillars are holding up the earth, but then the text says the earth hangeth on nothing. You know, this is not a contradiction, but you must look at what is actually going on here. And these are not the things that these guys can actually answer for you. You know, when it comes to the text. So we see that a firmament is something that expands or basically that stretches out. The root word is raka, to beat out, to stamp out. And so we can see clearly that God has expanded or made an expansion when it comes to the heavens. And when you look at the heavens, the word right there, shemayim, and it also means what we call a lofty place. Appreciate it, Haitian QT. And so it also demonstrates a lofty place or lofty abode. So let's look at the word shemayim real quick. Let's look at that word and really look at it and see what we got here when it comes to that word.
Shamayim.
All right, so if you look at it, it's meaning it's an unused root, meaning to be lofty, right? And so when you look at it, it's used as to be lofty, the sky, aloft, the dew, perhaps alluding to the visible arch in visible arch, which the clouds move. And these things are very important, as well as the higher either where the celestial bodies revolve, air, astrologer, or heaven. So we can kind of look at it and see that when it says a lofty abode or lofty place, that's very important because if I'm calling the heavens, if I say the firmament of heaven, if I say the firmament of heaven, what I'm saying is the expansion of the lofty abode. So why is it a lofty abode? Well, because God is expanding his lofty abode, and he's basically expanding his universe. And so the scriptures actually teach that in Isaiah 40 and 22. And we're going to get off to that. But for now, let's kind of look at, what the problem that has arisen from this that caused these guys to view these things a certain way. Okay, so it says, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. So first of all, God comes on the scene and he's creating things. And when he comes on the scene, water is already there. The earth is actually submerged in the water, but water is actually already there. And he moves on the water. So it seems to me that when you start looking at when he's creating things, or when he's reshaping or making these things, that he's forming the earth. The earth is void. I'm saying that word is tahu bahu, which I believe means to be laid waste or empty. So the earth has been empty and it's a waste at that time. And so what he does is he comes and he shapes the earth from this void place, and he shapes the earth, and he causes he deals with, first he starts dealing with let there be light. And most people will say, well, he didn't create the light until the fourth day. That's what they will tell you. But in reality, what's going on here is when he says let there be light, there is a source of light, or let there appear light. Let there appear light. And so there is a source of light there. And me personally, I believe that that source of light is the sun. And most people may say, well, he didn't create the sun until the fourth day. I don't see that as that. What I see is that the solar regulation, which governs the seasons, times, and of those things, started on the fourth day. And the purpose is given on why he made those things on the first day, on the fourth day. They're given for the purpose of why he made the greater and the lesser light. And so the redactor is saying, and God made a greater light and a lesser light, and also the stars. And so really what's being said here is that why God made these things and the purpose of these things on the fourth day. But what's being actually brought forth on the fourth day is the solar regulation, because that's very important. Because now what he's showing you is that really on the first day, when he says let there be light, is that the source of light is the sun. But what causes evening and morning? What actually causes morning and evening is when the earth rotates on its axis. So if we have a source of light that is there, that is the sun, but then we also have an earth rotating on its axis, right? Then we can establish morning and evening. So then once you get to the fourth day, what's being stated here is divine purpose, why he created the greater, the lesser light, and the stars. And he starts now what we call the solar regulation. And this solar regulation is the regulation that causes your seasons that we see now today. And we know how the seasons operate. So he tells you how he separated light from day in verse 4. I mean, in day 4. This is how he separated light from day. He says evening from morning, or morning from evening. And it's by the earth turning on its axis with a stable source at that time of light that we see until the solar regulation is started, which will cause what we see our seasons to start. And so this is very important. What's up, Lone Tune? And so this is very important that we have to look at, because let's get back to this firmament thing, because it says, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above. So what he does is he causes what we call the cycle to start up.
what he does is he separates the one of the ways he takes the water from the water that was below, and he puts a firmament in between it, a space in between that, and he causes and he puts the waters in the heavens, which is we're going to show you what it really is. And one of the reasons why he does that is because it causes what we call how do you call it, vaporization, until we start seeing condensation. And so this is how rain goes. This is why he says that he had not caused it to rain yet, because there was not a man to till the ground. And when he said how when he tells you how when man was made, basically how he watered the earth. He watered the earth by mist coming up. Now, when you look at that word mist, the word mist there is vaporization, to vaporize. And so what happens is when the sun hits the ocean, it causes vaporization, which is gases that come up. And those gases that come up, it goes up into what we see the upper area, past the expansion, up into what we see, which is a part of the atmosphere, and it causes and it condensates. It condensed. It causes condensation to where it produces clouds. And what happens is that in those clouds you have droplets of water that's being formed up there, condensation. And once the water gets heavy enough, then it drops. Or sometimes we see that electrical and positive charges, which is what causes your violent storms that we see, as well as the electrical discharges that we see that take place, or plasma that we see, electrical discharges, which is the plasma that we see, which is these strikes that we see of when there is a high contact, or there is a close contact connection between positive and negative charges when it comes to in the clouds. And what you see is the snapping together, or almost like an electrical discharge, or like static electricity of positive and negative charges snapping together while making clapping noises. And so this is what you see. And when the clouds get a certain close to these negative or positive charges, they attract to each other. And once they attract to each other, then they pop and they make the type of sound that we see today. So this is very important. So let's look at a couple of scriptures to confirm some of these things, what I'm talking about. All right. So when we look at the lofty abode, he says, waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Now, this word above right here is, I don't know why it's not.
Al.
All right, there we go.
Al.
It's al, right? Now, what they don't tell you is this word also is used as in the firmament just as well. If you look at it, it's actually used in the firmament 3 times. So not only is it looking at from the waters which were above, it also can be used as from the waters which were in the firmament. And reason why I say that it should and could be translated as that, because it's already been translated 3 times as in the firmament. And what's or beyond the firmament or through, it could or beside or against or off or forth. So it's translated these times. And so when we look when it says above the firmament, we see that it's translated as that too, just as well. Now, what's important about this is that, remember I told you that he said that he put a space there, which is the expanse, and he made the firmament. And so the firmament is it separates the waters which is below, which is the sea waters, from the waters which is above, which is what we see as clouds and rain. That's very important, because I'm going to show you something in Job that's going to really pull all this stuff out. So let's get up out of this text, and I showed you to where when it says above in the firmament, and let's go next door not next door. Let's go to 14, and let's look at Genesis 1 and 14. And deal with some of those things. Let's look at what 14 says. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night." Right. So so we see that he says, "Let there be lights in the firmament to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days," right, and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so, right? And God made two greater lights, and God made two great lights, and the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And it says, and God set them in the firmament. Now notice it says he set them in the firmament, right? I believe that same word right there. Oh, well, it's not there actually. That word's set right there.
Nathan.
Nathan, right? And if you look at it, it means to apply, to assign, to ascribe, to appoint, bestow. So God sets them in their proper order, right, in the heavens, right? Now he tells you why he made the greater and the lesser light. Then he also tells you, that he brought forth the stars. When he says, "Let there be lights in the firmament," which deals with the stars just as well. And he says, that word right there could be made, "Let there appear," just as well. Lights in the firmament. And so when we look at it right, it says, and that's another thing, Proverbs 30:20, by the knowledge of the depths are broken up. By his knowledge, the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. That's very important. They drop down the dew. We're going to get to that. And so it says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And let's jump down to it. And God set them in the firmament. God sets them in the firmament, right? Now we see that they're set in the firmament. And, we see the ruler of day and the ruler of night. And then we also see he causes the solar regulation, which deals with your seasons. And it says, and to rule over the day and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. Now notice he says to divide the light from the darkness. It told you that how he did in Genesis up here, that he divided the light from the darkness early on. So one of the ways he divided the light from the darkness early on is the same way that he divided it here. It's the same thing. Notice he says here, he says, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Well, it says the same thing over here. So then you have to say, well, what is Moses talking about, or what is this redacted talking about? Well, what he's talking about is how he divided the light from the darkness is by the same source of light that we see from day one, also from day 4 and day 4. So what he's telling you, the purpose on why God made these greater and lesser lights, also with the addition of other lights that we see that's made to appear, that will call and that he has set in order to cause the solar regulation. But we see early on the light that we see that was in the beginning, that we see on the first day, on how he divided day and night. And we see him also dividing day and night here. And basically Moses is giving you how he did it, the purpose for it, and also the solar regulation. And so let's look at 20. This is Genesis 1:20. It says, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life, and fly, that they may fly above the earth in the open, right? That's what he says, right? Now, once again, that word above there, look what it means.
Al.
And that they may fly above or in the firmament or of the heaven. Now notice he says early on, he called the firmament heaven. It says it early on, it says, and God called the firmament heaven. Where is this at? And this is verse 8, Genesis 1 and 8. And God called the firmament heaven. Why did God call the firmament heaven? Why? Because it was his expanded lofty place, I mean. And so we see that God has expanded his kingdom. He stretches out the heavens as a tent there to be, as a tent to be dwelled therein. Now, when you look at that word is raka, to spread out, to be out, to be expanded, right? So he's expanding out. He's expanding or extending or making an extension of his kingdom prior to he's extending his family, basically his lofty place. And so when we look at it, after he does that, he makes the earth, and then he sets also the other solar the other planets that we see in place, the stars just as well, tells the purpose of those things, tells you how he divides light from night, from day, basically by a source of a stationary light in the first day, and then in the fourth day, giving you the divine purpose of those things, why he made them, and also how he made also the other lights to appear just as well too. All right, so let's start dealing with, how the birds will fly above in the earth, in the open firmament of heaven, in the open firmament of heaven. So one would say, well, if this thing is solid, how are these guys flying in the firmament? One of the things that we must realize is that it's not solid as they say that it is, right? This is what they thought it to be, but it really means the expansion. And in some other places, we see that it could be looked at as the sky just as well. So we got to look at those things. So let's jump to a little bit more scriptures and really begin to look at, bring out some things. Now that we got through that, let's begin to look at a little bit more. All right, so let's look at Proverbs 8 and 28. Proverbs 8 and 28. Now, it says, this is 27. Let's jump to 27. It says, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above, right? When he strengthened the fountains of the deep. Now, when you look at that word established or the clouds above,
Amatz.
That word is amatz, right? Now let's look at it.
Amatz.
Look what it means. It means to confirm, be courageous, of good carriage, steadfast, minded, strongly, right? But one of the words you want to look at here is to make strong. Because when you look at when he established the clouds above, it means to make strong. When he strengthened the fountains of the deep. And to prove that, we're going to show you some things to where he says the sky is strong, or different things we want to look at in the scriptures to confirm what I'm saying. Now, let's look at Job 37 and 18. Now, if you look at Job 37 and 18, let's start in 17. It says, how thy garments are warm when he quilted the earth by the south wind, right? By the south wind, when he quilted the earth by the south wind. Now, understand, most south winds that you see brings clouds in. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong? So we can kind of see what's going on in the Hebrew word right there.
Chazak.
Kazat, right? And it means to be strong, right? In the sense of hard, hottest, or harder, mighty, sore, stiff, right? Strong, right? Bold, violent, right? So this is what this is talking about. The word right here, the sky, is shakak or something like that.
Shachak.
Shakak. And it means, it's translated cloud 11 times, sky 7, heaven 2, small dust 1. Right? And look what it means. A powder as beaten small. By analogy, a thin vapor. By extensive, the firmament, cloud, small dust, heaven. Now this is saying that has thou with him spread out the shakak, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass. Notice it says that he has spread out the sky, which is strong, or the clouds, right, which is strong. So remember, we read to you earlier in Proverbs that the sky or the cloud is strong, right? And so now he's saying, how thy garments are warm when he quilted the earth by the south wind, has thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong. So the sky is strong, right? So they will say, well, the sky here is talking about the firmament, right? Because they see that it's strong, right? But let's see why he says the sky is strong. That's very important. He says, as a molten looking glass. Now, anybody who knows the cultural context of this will know what a molten looking glass look like, right? He says, as a molten looking glass. Now, let's begin to look at what a molten looking glass look like. Let's look at this. So here, hold on. Hold on. I'm trying to pull it up right now. What the heck is going on? Oh, let me hit this. Okay. There we go. All right, so let me pull these images up to you so you can see. I'm going to screen share here. All right, so let's see. All right, so if you look at my screen, what I did was I pulled up molten glass. Now I want you to look at this picture clearly and closely. This is molten glass right here. One of the ways that you make glass, or how they make glass, is by sand. They use sand to make glass, right? And this is what we call molten glass. So we look at the text when it says, the sky is strong, right? And as a molten looking glass, right? The Hebrews at that time knew what a molten looking glass would have looked like. And this is what molten glass looked like this. Now, I want to show you something. Look at this picture really closely. I want you to look at it closely. Look at these images closely. Look at it closely, all of them, right? Now, let's go and type in something here, and let me show you something. Let's see, what is it? What is it? Now, what I want you to look at and see closely here, what do you see? For instance, this image right here. And all of these images I'm showing, these are images that we see of the sunset. All of these. Now, remember, I showed you molten looking glass. I showed you that. Now, if you notice, look at all of these images. This is the sunset. Also, you can look at the sunrise. So you have the sunset and you also have the sunrise. Now, let's go back to molten glass. What do you see? What do you see? You see the sky, the sunset, and also will be the sunrise looking like this molten glass right here. So when you go back to the very text that we see here, this says, "Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass?" He's saying that it looks like as a molten looking glass. That's what he said. And we just showed you what molten glass looked like, and also why he says the sky looked like that, because of the sunset and all those things. Now, what's amazing is this is, if you look and see what he's talking about here, he's talking about the clouds the whole time. He says, "Hearken unto this, O Job, stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Dost thou know when God disposed them and caused the light of his cloud to shine?" And so when we begin to see the light of the cloud to shine is when either thunderstorms or when we see the sun peeking through the clouds. But it gets even more interesting, because when we start to look at it, let's really start to look at what he is talking about. Because he begins to start talking about weather patterns. He says, after it, let's look at what it says up above. It says, "Hear attentively the noise of his voice and the sound that goeth out of his mouth. He directed it under the whole heaven." What is he talking about? "And his lightning unto the ends of the earth." Look what he says. "After it a voice roareth. He thundereth with the voice of his excellency." He's talking about after lightning, what takes place, which is thunder. So the whole time, this is why he's talking about the sky is strong and what it looks like as a molten glass, because he's talking about what takes place in the sunset, what takes place in the sunrise, what takes place when lightning is going forth, what takes place in storms. And the sky is strong because we see these electrical charges just taking place, which is pure power. This is what he's talking about. What up, IGIC? "And after it a voice roareth, he thundereth with the voice of his excellency, and he will not stay them with his voice when his voice is heard. God thundereth marvelously with his voice. Great things doeth he, which we cannot comprehend." Look what he started talking about. "For he saith to the snow, Be thou on the earth, likewise to the small rain, and to the great rain of his strength." So you have small rain and also great rain of his strength, which is the thunderstorms. he sealeth up the hand of every man, that all man may know his work. Hold on for a minute. Am I sharing my screen? Let's see what y'all saying. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. So let me get up out of this. So we showed already what we see here in regards to the molten images, right? Molten glass. Then, you know what I'm saying? We go back to the sunset. And we can see I don't know why I just said that. We can see why he says the sky says molten glass. So we understand that, right? All right, so let's go and look at let's go. If you get to trolling, you're gonna get kicked up out of here because I see you, Trump's angel. And I don't know if you're gonna get to start trolling or whatever because I ain't never seen you before. But if you get to trolling, Ecclesiastes is gonna put you up out of here because we ain't playing no games with no silly stuff. And so this is why he says as a molten glass. So we showed you what molten glass looked like, and it looks just like this. Now let's begin to get off into a little bit more of Job's writings concerning what is he talking about here. Hey, all right, so let's look at this. All right, so let's go back to some of Job's writings. He says, and now men see not the bright light which is in the clouds, but the wind passeth and cleanseth them. So he says, now men see not the bright light that's in the clouds, but the wind passes. So when the wind passes, it cleanses the clouds to where they can see the bright light, the sun. Now it says fair weather coming out of the north. With God is terrible majesty. Touching the Almighty, we cannot find him. He is excellent in power and in judgment. So we can get an idea of what is God talking about here. So let's begin to talk about some other scriptures then that proves what I'm saying to be true. Let's go into some other text here then. Let's go into go into let's see. Where's that verse at? Let's look and see if it's 26. Oh, Job. Let's try 26. Job 26. Let's see what this. Oh yeah, this is it. So let's look at Job 26:7. It says, he stretcheth out the north over the empty place and hangeth the earth upon nothing. Now they'll try to tell you, well, the earth is sitting on pillars, but he just told you he hangeth the earth on nothing. You know, he told you that. I'm saying it says he bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds. You notice he just said he bounded up the waters in his thick clouds, right? It's clearly telling you here that the waters that we see that's been bound up, that's been put in the firmament, is in his clouds. That's what it's talking about. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds. I wonder what's the word right there, right? It says, and the cloud is not rent under them. Notice he says the cloud is not rent under them. Now that's very important,
Okay.
right? Because look what it says. It's used as divide, up, cleave, rend, breach, asunder. So he's saying to cleave, generally to rend, break up or rip or open or make a breach, right? Asunder, cut out, divide, hatch, rend, asunder, rip, tear. So basically, what this is dealing with, okay. All right, so basically, what this is dealing with right here is his atmosphere, and also when we start looking at the separation of these things, but the waters is bound up in the clouds, and look what it says, and the cloud is not rent under it. So this is why the Hebrews looked at the sky as being strong, or the expanse as being strong just as well too. Why? Why did they look at it as being firm? Because you got water just at the top of the firmament and it's holding the water up. So the only thing they could have seen on the earth that can hold water up was something that was firm. So this is why they said that the firmament was firm, right? Not that it was, and that it was solid, because it was holding water up, and they didn't understand how you had waters, or how things work, or how you had waters that was being held up in the heavens. And the only way that they can deal with that was say is, this is the firmament. Has to be solid. But in reality, he's telling you right here, and the cloud is not rent under them. Right? This is why when you're able to look at what the Shishak, however, Sha'ak, the cloud, it's also called extension of the firmament, or the firmament just as well. Because why? Because they're both in the expanse, and they're both holding, they're both connected to each other, but it's holding, basically the waters are separating them from falling to the waters that's on the ground, right? In a sense, that's what it's doing. So then when you see that when you see how basically it does fall, it's through it's like a cycle. It's a mist. Now what I want to show you is to go back to the mist. Let's look at Genesis 2, right? And look what happens here in Genesis 2. He says, but there went up a mist. That word there, mist, look what it is.
Aid.
Sense of enveloping, a fog, mist, vapor. It's used for mist one, vapor one. Why? Because this is how rain works. And to prove that, let's go to it and let's look how rain works. Let's go to YouTube. Let's see.
Let's look at the science of rain and how raindrops form. First, we'll need the sun. When the sun shines on water on the Earth's surface, the heat of the sun warms the water, turning it into an invisible gas called water vapor. This process, the changing of water into a gas, is called evaporation. Because gases are lighter than liquids, water vapor rises up into the sky. And the further you move up and away from the Earth's surface, the colder the temperature gets. So in the sky, the water vapor cools and changes back into tiny water droplets. This change is called condensation and is the opposite of evaporation. Clouds are made up of tiny water droplets, so when condensation occurs in the sky, clouds form and grow. Let's take a closer look. When water droplets bump into one another, they stick together and grow in size. They continue to grow until they are too heavy and fall as rain. They even grow as they bump into one another on their journey from the cloud to the ground. And every single raindrop that reaches the ground is made up of 1 million of the original tiny water droplets. Raindrops fall on the ground surface where the sun can shine on them, and the whole process happens again. This is called the water cycle and keeps water moving from the ground to the sky, providing the water.
All right, cool. So another act that he does is he causes a south wind to actually push a lot of these things that we see, you know, when it comes to strong patterns and so we see that he's saying that in Job, actually. He's actually saying these things in Job. And so we see, he says, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground, right? So we see that mist is vapor, you know what I'm saying? And so this is what we see, which is evaporation that also goes up as a gas and then causes condensation. And so let's go back to Job. And to prove that, let's look at some other. So we talked about Proverbs 8 and 28. We dealt with that. We dealt with the Rakia. We dealt with Job 37 and 18. Okay, so now let's kind of deal with something else here. Just interesting. This is also this is one of the sites that I go to is a very good site. And let's get this site. It's called the Evidence for God, and you know, it deals a lot with science, and also got a lot of science articles on here and stuff like that, and also you know, well, a lot of stuff in general. So it deals with God and science. So I want to kind of read some of these things, what it says, if you guys can see this. Let me make sure you guys can see this. Let's see what I'm saying. Yeah, you guys can see that. All right, so one of the things that it says here is let's jump down. This is the firmament. It says the main reason why skeptics have said the Bible endorses dome cosmology comes from the King James Version translation of the Bible. Here, the KJV translation of Genesis 1:6-8. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so, and God called the firmament heaven." It says the word firmament implies a solid material, coming from the Latin word firmamentum.
from Jerome Latin's Vulgate translation of the Bible. The Latin word firmamentum has the meaning of support or prop. However, the original word rakia, which Jerome translates into the Latin word firmamento, is not nearly as specific, time as specifics at times in the old. Hold on. One's feet twice, stamp something with the feet once, spreading metal 4 times, spreading out the earth 3 times, and spreading the sky or the clouds once, right? So it says, I don't know why my chat was disconnected. Okay, it says, and spreading the sky or the clouds once. So the verb raka does not necessarily refer to the beating out of a solid object, but to the spreading out process, whether the object be solid or not, right? And we told you why they would have viewed it as in the sense of a something that was solid. And it says the Hebrew noun rakia is used 17 times in the Bible. Even of those instances occur 11 of those instances occur 7 verses from Genesis 1, right? 5 instances of rakia occur in Ezekiel's vision, once referring to the expanse or extent of the angel's wings, and the other 4 referring to something that appeared to be like a gleaming crystal, although it never identified being a solid object. 2 others occur in the Psalms, one referring to the expanses described in Genesis, also written by Moses, and the second referring to the mighty expanse of God's power. So rakia itself does not always refer to a solid object, right? So it says that God himself defines the rakia as saying God called the expanse heaven. So God firmament is not more than it says the so-called firmament is nothing more than heaven itself and does not comprise as a separate structure. The fact is further emphasized in Genesis 1 and 2, where God says, let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. Obviously, birds cannot fly through a solid structure, clearly indicating that rakia is not a solid object, right? So look at it when it says pillars of heaven. It says in the book of Job, Job is talking to 4 friends and eventually to God himself. During one of these long discourses, Job talks about God's creation, referring to the pillars of heaven. Skeptics say that the pillars hold up the solid dome, firmament above the earth. However, before deciding exactly what these pillars of heavens are, we should look at the verse in context. He spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. That's Job 26:7. It says he wraps up the earth waters in clouds, yet the clouds do not burst under their weight. That's Job 26:8. I just read that. He covers the face of the full moon, spreading his clouds over it. That's Job 26:9. He marks out the horizon on the face of the waters for a boundary between light and darkness. That's Job 26:10. The pillars of the heavens quake against his rebuke. That's Job 26:11. As one can see, Job comes up with some rather remarkable insights into the nature of the earth. He says that the earth is suspended over nothing, that the clouds carry water and have weight, yet do not fall to the earth. In the context of the passage, it is clear that the pillars are the mountains which quake at God's rebuke, whereas the Quran says the earth is like a carpet that is held in place by heavy mountains, described as being like the tent pegs, so that it won't move or shake. The Bible associates the mountains with shaking and says that instead of placing the mountains on the earth, God caused the mountains to rise up. So it is pretty obvious that the pillars are holding anything up, but aren't holding anything up, but are merely
freestanding pillars similar found in Solomon's temple. Very important. Very important. Now, you can also see that they call pillars of smoke or fire as looked at as being volcanoes just as well. And if you look at it, the pillars hold up the heavens, it says. Why? Because when you get up high, 6,000 to 7,000 feet over sea level, then you start to see that the clouds touches the mountains. So therefore, the pillars or the mountains are holding up the heavens. And so when they say a pillar of smoke, you can look at it because it looks like smoke is coming off the mountains, but it's really the clouds. This is what the Hebrews would have seen in the ancient times, and this is why they explain it like this. And so, it says another example. It says the molten mirror. Another example given for the claim that the Bible teaches there is a solid dome that holds stars, that holds the stars, come from the book of Job. Can you with him spread out the sky strong as a molten mirror? Out of context, it seems like an open and shut case that the Bible teaches that the skies are solid. However, there are some definite problems. There are some definite problems with the English translation of this verse. First, the Hebrew word is shakak. We showed you that. Translated skies is probably a bad translation of the Hebrew. The usual word that would have been used for sky or heaven is shemayim. The meaning of the Hebrew word shakak is usually called cloud or dust. Looking at the context of Job 37, the entire beginning of the chapter is describing a violent storm. This is why he's saying that the sky is strong, because it's talking about a violent storm. And then when you see it looking as molten glass, we showed you why it looks like molten glass and how also glass is made. And once it's made, it gives out the very glare of what we've seen as a sunset or sunrise, and it looks like molten glass, right? This is what it's talking about. So it says, looking at the context of Job, where it says, the entire chapter is describing a violent storm. And three other instances with the same chapter, the word shakak is translated as cloud. So it would make sense to translate it as cloud in the verse. Also, the Hebrew word ray, translated mirror, is found nowhere else in the Old Testament. So its exact meaning remains uncertain. However, it is derived from the Hebrew word ra'ah, which means to appear or to see. Further evidence that ray does not mean mirror comes from the Greek lexicon, or LXX, translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, translated by Jews into Greek during the 3rd to 1st centuries BC, where the translators used the Greek word hauresis, which means appearance. From this information, we could come up with a much better translation that fits the context of the chapter, right? So it says, can you with him spread out the mighty clouds with an molten appearance? So then this is why I typed in glass, a molten glass, because when you look at it, it appears to look just like what we see of a sunset or a sunrise. So it's really dealing with the appearance of what it looks like. And also the Hebrews would have known this because they knew how molten glass was made. And therefore, in making molten glass, it looked at just how the sunset or the sunrise looked as a strong sky. So this is what he's talking about. This is clear. You can't get past this. It's definitely clear. So it says, in other words, God tells Job that his friend doesn't know what he is talking about, right? I'm sorry, hold on, not that. The other complication for atheists trying to pin a solid sky teaching on this verse from Job is God's response to Elihu's sermon on creation. In the very next chapter, God rebukes Elihu with some pretty strong words. Who is that darkens counsel by words without knowledge. In other words, God tells Job that his friends doesn't know what he's talking about. So much for this claim that the Bible endorses the idea that the sky is a solid dome. So since God himself answers Job in chapter 5 sermon, Job in a answers Job in a 5th chapter sermon, atheists would have a valid point if they found an error in any of those chapters. However, you won't find any complaints about the content of the chapters 38 to 42. So let's look at it. It says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, when I made a cloud its garment and thick darkness its swallowing band, right? So we see that. So one of the other scriptures that they use is Amos chapter 9. The one who builds his upper chambers in the heavens and has founded his vaulted dome over the earth. Because some translations, which is the New American Standard Bible, translated as that, as dome, you know what I'm saying? And so this is where they get this from. This is why they always jump to this very text, right? So it says, this is the only verse in which the word dome actually appears in English translation of the Bible, but it is only found in the NASB translation. Here are some of the other translations of the verse. It is he that builded his stories in the heavens and have founded his truth in the earth. This is Amos 9:6, King James. That it is he who builds his lofty place in the heavens and sets his foundation on the earth. This is the NIV. He built his palace in the heavens and let its foundations rest on the earth. Right. This is the CEV. He that built his accession in heaven and have found his bundle upon the earth. This is the DRB. And it is he that builds his ascent up to the sky and establishes his promise on the earth. This is the LXX. And so the Hebrew word in question is Aguda, meaning a band, one, bands, bunch, one. The other translations use the word foundation, NIV, and troop, KJV. Here are the other 3 verses in which the word Aguda appears. And ye shall take a bunch, Aguda, of hyssop and dip it in the blood which is in the basin, and apply some of the blood that is in the basin in the lintel of 2 doorposts, and none of you shall go outside the door of the house until the morning. This is Exodus, so it could be used as bunch. It's also used as band. It says, and the sons of Benjamin gathered together behind Abner and became one band, right? So then it's also used as bonds, bands also in Isaiah 58:6. So it is obvious, he says, that the NASB translation Amos 9 is off base. This example is typical of the kind of objections raised by atheists. Their MO is to find an unusual translation, usually found in only one translation, and use this proof that the Bible is inaccurate. Right, Metal Slugs Master. I agree that, that, what they viewed, at that time looked like that because it was by perception. But for the most part, when you begin to get off to the text, you see the deeper meaning, and you can begin to see why they viewed it like that, because of we see that the Shemayim, or the heavens, or what they call the firmament, is holding up. I'm not a flat earther. That the heavens are holding up the waters, and the only waters that we see that is in the expanse, above the expanse, and in the expanse is rain, clouds, basically. And so basically the Hebrews would have looked at the expanse as being solid because it was holding waters up there, especially seeing that how waters was contained and bottled up during their time. something would have had to be firm to hold those waters. So that's how they viewed it at that time. And so they would have said that it was firm, the firmament. And so this is why we see that they're viewing it like that, but in reality, it's just not the case. And so all the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. So we see basically how these things are used. So you can go to this and you can read this on your own time, but just some of the things that dispute what they're dealing with when it comes to biblical cosmology. And so you might want to check this out when it talks about the four corners of the earth and things like that. And often when they said that the earth will be moved, or it deals with a lot of those things, because once you really start to go through those scriptures, then you really start to realize that what these guys are saying is not true. And the Bible, is more so looking at perception. I'm saying, and it says the sun arises and the sun goes down. That doesn't take place. We know that doesn't happen even in the flat earth model. That's perception, though. In their model, they'll say, well, the earth is not round, but in your model, half of the earth is round and there's a dome over it. So therefore, when you use Isaiah 40 and 22, when it says he did, well, let's go there. Matter of fact, when you use that verse, that don't even work for you, actually. This is Isaiah 40 and 22. So it says, it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth. Now, really, to be honest, is he sitting on a dome? Because you say that it is a solid dome. So if you look at it, that's not actually a circle at all. So either way, if you want to say it's a globe, from perspective how it's being viewed, if he's looking down on it, it will look like a circle. It's not looking like a dome to him, not unless you're saying that he's sitting on a dome. That makes no sense. And so it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers. Look what it says. They stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, right? So he stretches out the heavens. I don't know what I'm saying. So he stretches out the heavens as a curtain, right? As you see. Now, when it says he stretches out the heavens as a curtain, remember we said that the Hebrew word for is rakia for expanse and sky and different other expansion. So he stretches out the heavens as a he expands it, right? And he says as a tent to dwell therein. So we see that he has stretched out the heavens, or this lofty place, his lofty abode, to be dwelt therein. And so what dwells in the heavens? He stretched it out as a lofty abode. Who dwells in the heavens? Well, let's go to the scriptures to see. And it says he spreaded them out as a tent to be dwelt therein, or them as a tent to dwell in. That's what it says. Now, let's look at who dwells in the heaven. This is Revelations chapter 12. Let's look at what it says here. It says, this is verse 7. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was there a place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out on earth, and the angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our God day and night. And they overcame them by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and by the word of their testimony, and they love not their lives unto death. Watch what it says, verse 12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Now remember, I said that he stretcheth forth the heavens as a tent to be dwelt therein. So now ask your question, who dwells in the heavens? We see who dwells in the heavens. So we see that he's expanded his kingdom, his lofty place that we see. And so this is what the expansion is. This is why it is called the firmament of heaven, the expansion of his lofty place, now, or his lofty abode. And he has set up celestial bodies to rule and govern the seasons, and also night and day. And so we see that there are people that dwell, there are beings that dwell in the heavens, and the heavens have been stretched out to be dwelt therein. Now, one of the things that they did with in Isaiah 40 and 22 is this. They look at this word circle, Kug. And if you notice, it's translated circle once, circuit once, and compass one. Circle, circuit, compass. Now, really why this is important is because, when you look at it, God sits, above, the earth. And the earth also, runs a circuit in its space, as well as, the solar system, which has a circuit just as well too. And so God sees this. And so he's sitting on an earth that we see that rotates, and also that has a circuit itself just as well. And so this can be used and translated as that too, as we can see in the text too, as a circuit, as something that we see that starts one way, and then also it ends another way, or cycles, basically a cycle, or as we can see, something that does rotate. And so clearly you can't use this scripture. And if you want to talk about flat and different, there's words in the Hebrew for flat if it was a flat earth, but it does not say that. And so clearly we can see that other scriptures they use that when it says the earth shall not be moved, those are scriptures that we really want to go into, but for time's sake, I really don't have time. But when you even go into those scriptures and you read the entirety of what's being talked about, then you realize that this is not talking about what they're talking about, and it's totally different. And so just kind of want to go off into some of the things of the firmament, things of how the sky is strong, of that matter, and really give people an understanding of what he is talking about in Job, what's being talked about in Genesis, also in Proverbs, and in the book of Isaiah just as well. And there is more of a plethora of scriptures that talk about how Elijah, he made it rain, and he prayed to God and it rained. But before he went up to a high place, he looked into the ocean, and what did he see come out of the ocean? A cloud. And so he's seeing that the clouds was coming. And so remember, we showed you how clouds are made and how they hold water. There's a video, I believe, on YouTube that you can Google it, and it shows you how water sits in clouds. Somehow, some way, they got a camera or got something to put it in clouds. It is so beautiful. It looked like an ocean. That's how beautiful it is. It looks like an ocean up there when you begin to look at it, how it sits there in these clouds before it drops down. It's beautiful. And so they understand and they learn how these things are working, but here's breaking out some of those things. So hopefully you guys can understand that. And with that, I'm going to end this. I'm tired, take my butt to bed, relax a little bit, grace and peace to the family over there. And mainly there was more to bring out, but like I said, I'm freestyling a lot of stuff as we go. And so, I don't have too much at this time. But, Let's see something real quick. Let's see. And so, with that being said, I don't see too many questions and nothing like that. So, appreciate you guys for coming in. Hopefully, next time you guys can join the panel. And grace and peace to you guys.